Join me in the audio garden to cultivate our collective wisdom, nurture creativity, and spread love. My name is Martha Cinader. Welcome to Listen and Be Heard. I'm so glad to be here, and I hope it doesn't rain today because we have some friends who promised to come, and I want you to meet them. I really do. They have so much to share with us about writing and poetry and just what's going on. Here in Greenville, South Carolina, there's already bulbs peeking up from below. I know the daffodils and the tulips are going to be showing themselves pretty soon. And there's buds on the blueberry bushes. We had a really cold winter, so I'm looking forward to a good crop of blueberries, or I'm hoping for one anyway, and I will certainly be thankful if that's what happens. But we've already been enjoying new poetry blooms here. It's the first time we have ever had poet laureates evolving in the creative bed of Greenville. And we're lucky to have two, Glenis Redmond and Castro Spratt, who's the teen poet laureate of Greenville. So, of course, we're going to hear some poetry from them. And also a couple poets who attended the Versers of Color open mic in Hendersonville, North Carolina, where my sometime co-host Tony Robles went to read some of his own poetry as well. And the whole event had a Black History Month theme. And also, as promised, we're going to talk about publishing. And today I'll be talking with Meg Reid, the executive director of Hub City Publishers in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And she has a whole lot of information and experience in the world of publishing. Oh, but look, I see Glenis and Anna, and it looks like Anna Castro Spratt, our teen poet laureate, is preparing to read a poem for us.
When I met my doppelganger. She had long brown hair that I had never learned to love until I braided it from behind, watched the way it creased down her spine like it never had in the mirror. I took her to the jazz club down the street where we met our first boyfriend so I could experience the velvet tunes for the first time again. Observed how her fingers tapped at the hips of her skinny jeans that I hadn't worn since middle school. But now I loved the denim, how it followed our curves in a way my own dresses didn't. And for the first time, I thought I loved a woman. In the summer, we drove to the Dole Lakes, to the cliffs I'd been too afraid to jump from, but told her I used to easily, so I could watch her from below, the way our body hit the water painlessly and sunk below the pond's skin. We watched a map turn blue and red in the fall. We turned to each other and talked politics, who we'd cast one ballot for, even though it was no discussion. Being one, we repeated and nodded until we were just one voice. And I realized that was all we loved, hearing the sounds of our own voices rattling inside each other's bones, spitting images back and forth.
You heard it first here at Listen and Be Heard. I want to thank you so much, Anna Castro Spratt. My name is Martha Cinader. The show is Listen and Be Heard, an hour for writers and readers. And my guests today are Glenis Redmond and Anna Castro Spratt, both poet laureates of Greenville in South Carolina, where this show originates from. And not only are you two poet laureates, one the senior and one the junior. Um, but you're also the first poet laureate of Greenville, South Carolina. So, welcome to Listen and Be Heard. I'm very happy to have you here. We had you here previously, Glenis. My co host, Tony Robles, interviewed you about your book, The Listening Skin. So, it's nice to have you back to talk about some other things.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
I was wondering, how did it come about, and how did you find out that there was going to be, or were you involved maybe even in Greenville having a poet laureate? It seems to be something that's happening more and more around the country. How did it happen here in Greenville, South Carolina?
Well, I felt like that I had been unofficially a poet laureate in South Carolina, as that the position is to be a poet, but also have an outreach, a very active outreach. And it was about 12 years ago, I had talked to certain people about having a poet laureate of South Carolina because Charleston had one, Columbia had one, Rock Hill had a poet laureate, and of course, Greenville should have had one. And there were several people in the community who were interested. I think Furman, the Metropolitan Arts Council, the city, the Peace Center where I was poet in residence. So it took about 12 years for it to come to fruition. And then when they decided to do it, then they held submissions. And so people had to apply. Myself, I had to apply. And at the end, I was chosen and so glad to be on this 2 year term. One of my things that I was very, very passionate about was having a youth poet laureate. So we have our fine youth poet laureate, Anna.
Tell me about, please, though, why a youth poet laureate? I think that's not happening quite as much as just poet laureates in general. And why was that important to you?
Well, I had worked with a team of youth as the poet in resident of the Peace Center. And also when I lived in Asheville, I was very interested in taking poetry to the youth because I'm a teaching artist and I go into the schools. But across the country, the United States does have a youth poet laureate, and many cities had started it. And I thought Greenville should have that as well because when young people speak, I think their voice is, I won't say more passionate, but it's a different passion. They're on fire and they can speak to their peers in a way that I think older folks cannot. And they can also talk to the adults and hold their feet to the fire. So I believe in young people. And I'm just really proud that we picked a stellar poet laureate for our inaugural youth poet laureate, Anna.
Thank you.
Anna Castro Spratt. And so, Anna, how did you hear about this, and how was it for you to go through the process?
Well, a couple of months before the application for Greenville's Youth Poet Laureate, I'd been involved in a program called Youth in Government in South Carolina. And it's kind of a mock legislature system. We mock the government, the judicial system as well. And on the very first night for the first year, they wanted to have a YMCA Youth Poet Laureate. And when I found out about this, I've already been on leadership in the program. I'd known the people very well, and I talked to them and I said, I want to make this happen because it was kind of just thrown out just as an idea. And ended up being able to happen. And I read my first poem as a youth poet laureate at that conference. When I got back to school, I was great friends with my librarians at my old school, Riverside. And I told them and I was so excited about it. And they hadn't known that I was writing poetry so passionately. And a couple of weeks later, I was in the library again. And my librarian came back up to me and she said, "Hey, Anna, Greenville is looking for one too. There's an open application now." And for me, I mean, it was kind of both a testament to how amazing so many educators can be, but also I felt like it was a little bit of fate that I'd be able to apply. And when I applied, it was a process. There was a written portion. I had to send in videos, and I'm really grateful that I was able to get this position.
What is the position of poet laureate? How do you figure that out, and how do you see the two of you working together over these 2 years? What are you hoping to do?
Every poet laureate's mandate is different from city to city or state to state. And they have that we both have to do five poetry engagements in the communities. most likely with the community and rec centers. And then we are available on call through this inquiry system. You can go to the Greenville City's uh, webpage, and request either one of us to go speak anywhere in the city or in the county, actually. To this date, I have done 32 engagements, even though only five are required. So it's something that I feel passionate about because our job is basically to spread the love of poetry and to demystify it for those who feel like they don't like poetry. I just feel like people haven't found the right poet when they say they don't like poetry. So we have done some joint things together. Our first thing that we did together was the Jazz Festival last June. So we were there, and I was also there when Anna was inducted at the courthouse.
And have you done anything other than that yet as the city poet laureate, Anna?
I've also had a couple of engagements. I have one upcoming with the youth committee for the city council. This, I think, May, as the last meeting. I think Glenis might have the opportunity to do it as well. I'm not sure if you were inquired about it. And then, of course, there's just a bunch more events that I'm looking forward to doing as well. I've got a couple of things at school with readings that aren't necessarily with the Youth Poet Laureate program, but I'm sure there's a lot coming up, and I'm really excited for all those too. In the past, we just did a bus poetry project where we interviewed bus riders and we wrote poems about them and what we learned about their lives. It was really amazing being able to read that and hear what other people were writing and see the appreciation that we got from so many people for writing about them.
And if people are interested in that poetry from the whole bus thing, how can they access that?
You can go to the city page and find the link. There's a QR code. And if you're a bus rider in the city, they're on the bus shelters. So you can just put your phone up there. You can see the poet doing the poem. You can see the poem in print.
Like you can hold it up to the QR code and then see that on your phone? Is
You
that
can
what?
see it on your phone. You can hear the poem. You can see the poem. And I don't know if you knew this, but Nicole McCadden, who was the person through the city who works for Greenlink, that project, the Bus Poetry Project, just won a national award.
Amazing.
Well,
Thank you.
congratulations. You are from right around here, but Anna, you came to us from Brazil,
Yes.
correct?
I was born in Illinois, where my dad's side of the family is a really tiny little city called Dixon. And I lived there right up until almost my fifth birthday, so it was four. And we moved to Brazil right after that. I have a lot of family there. My mom's entire side is from Brazil, so we lived near São Paulo in a little city there. And I have family from all over, from an area called Minas Gerais, which is closer to Rio de Janeiro than São Paulo is. And we still go back almost every year. But when I was, I think, 7 or 8, we moved here to Greenville. We were just looking for new opportunities, new place to live. And this is where we ended up. And I love it. It's great.
Well, that's wonderful. And you have attended both the Fine Arts Center and the Governor's School here in Greenville. So I think you've really embraced the artistic, cultural community that you're in. I'm Martha Cinader, and we're talking about all things poetry. Here in Greenville, the County Museum does not charge admission, and there's a very good reason to go there. They have a precious poetry collection like no other anywhere because it's the pots of Dave the Potter, and he inscribed his poetry on the pots. And it's the most amazing and moving experience to be there and just look at those and like absorb the whole story of it and the feeling of it. And Glenis wrote a book of poems called Praise Songs for Dave the Potter with amazing illustrations by Jonathan Green that people everywhere can enjoy for the incredible art and poetry. And to learn more about David Drake, the potter and the poet. Several years ago, I did not introduce myself at the time, but I went to hear you at the Greenville County Museum, and you were talking about Dave the Potter. I would like to get you to talk for a moment about Dave the Potter because he was a poet. And also, I don't know if he had any connection directly with Greenville, but people can see his work at the Greenville County Museum.
Right. I write a lot about unearthed stories in the African American community and our lineage. And David Drake was an enslaved potter poet, which, those two words seldom go together. Someone who is enslaved would definitely do work and might be an artisan, but not necessarily be able to read and write, which he did. And he learned to read and write. They think he learned because his owner had a printing press and he had to clean the printing press. So he became literate and then took that long leap from literacy to being a poet. And he inscribed his pots, normally with couplets, but not always. When I became aware of this, maybe 13 years ago, I became very interested and even more interested when I found out that my mentor, spiritual and artistic mentor, Jonathan Green, had already painted his likeness in the 90s. And so it was a full circle moment for me to create that book with some other wonderful collaborators, Gabrielle Foreman, who is the editor and a MacArthur genius, and then also Dr. Lynette Overby, who's at University of Delaware. So we danced Dave to life. We wrote about Dave. There was painting of Dave's, interviewing Jonathan Green. So it's one of those wonderful projects that I think everybody coming together, it amplified Dave's work, even though I don't think he really needed us. I think we needed him more than anything because at a time where I feel like our history is, people are trying to erase our history. We need to be vigilant about telling these stories that not just African Americans need to hear, but everybody needs to hear. The poem that I'm going to read is called Forefather for David Drake. When the landscape does not bear black blooms, I reach my arm back for one who flares with instruction. Read what he wrote on Edgefield pots. This a noble churn. Fill it up and it'll never turn. From my childhood home, a mere 73 miles ragged stretch from Piedmont to Edgeville separates us. I make him out through 155 years through the muck and the fog of pale deceit. I let my fingers touch the clay brilliance. See him, a solid figure, a South Carolina son, a literary father with no daguerreotype. I conjure his visage in both verse and vessel through the whirls of his fingertips. I walk along the loops and ridges, sit between the lines of his etched couplets, press ear to the hum of hardened clay, hear him say, empty yourself. Pry these tight spaces open. Listen to the mountains and valleys I withstood.
Thank you so much for that, Glenis. I do appreciate it. I want to thank you so much, Anna Castro Spratt.
Thank you.
Glenis Redmond, the Teen Poet Laureate and the Poet Laureate, the inaugural Poet Laureates of Greenville, South Carolina. I want to thank you for being our Poet Laureates. And I hope to hear, let us know if you're reading some poetry around town.
Well, I hope that you'll look out for us because we'll have some things coming up in March. Visual and Verse will be at the Metropolitan Arts Council, and I'm pairing poets with artists. and the artists will write. I mean, the artists will paint, the poets will write, and we'll have in March, look at the Metropolitan Arts Council's website, you'll find that. And in April, I'll be doing a workshop at the Peace Center. And then May 10th, there will be a convening of poet laureates, and we'll be featuring our former poet laureate of the United States, Joy Harjo.
Definitely want to be there.
Yes, Google the Peace Center, and you can also look at my website, glenisredmond.com. But the other poet laureates I will be featuring that night are Jackie Shelton Green, Crystal Wilkinson, and Ed Madden, and myself. And then also I will be doing a Cave Canem workshop, which is an African American retreat, and that will be at the Upstate Circle of Friends. People can look at my website to find what's going on with that, and look for Anna and I pairing together in this. She has another year, but it will be my last year.
What is your website, Glenis?
It's just my name, glenisredmond.com.
And what about you, Anna? How can people find you in social media?
I have an Instagram handle, Anna C. Spratt. I usually post whenever I'm reading, wherever I'll be. And of course, just reaching out for any inquiries. You can look at the Greenville City website and ask for us to read. And I'm looking forward to seeing what else comes up.
Well, thank you very much. And maybe you'll both come and read when we inaugurate WLBH Radio in Greenville, South Carolina.
Oh, well, let us know. We would love to come. That's our job. So we'll love to come. Anna's really busy. I'm busy as well. We're both really busy, but we're very passionate about the word. So we'll make an effort to get there.
It's a great thing to know. I didn't know actually that citizens could just request it.
Yes, it is. I will be at the Upstate Poets on Sunday at 2:30, and they requested that I come. If I'm available and I have time, I try to, like I said, the dock gets really full, but I try to make an effort to do that, and look forward to joining you in the radio. So
all right.
It'd be great.
Thank you very much to both of you.
Thank you.
Once it's heard, it can't be unheard. Once it's published, it's not going to be unpublished. Once you read the poem, you can't unread it. No matter how an individual may try to push it to the side, forget about it, it's still in there. And it's the words, the meaning, the feelings behind it are taking root in their psyche, and they can't get rid of it.
I've been asking all of our guests about this phenomenon of banning books in the country, around the country, and as someone involved in publishing, I'm just wondering what your viewpoint is about this happening in different places in the libraries and the schools.
Well, obviously, it's incredibly alarming, and everything that we do at Hub City is about getting people more access to books, and that means books that kids want to read. And I know the statistics about Spartanburg and our academic gaps that we have in our schools. And the last thing people should be doing is taking books out of children's hands at this moment. They need to be getting more books into children's hands. That's how we see more successful adults and honestly, better citizens, more civic-minded citizens, the more you read. So I think that it's really alarming. And I just hope that people, seek out books that are at the center of this and support those authors, and make sure that their kids are still getting to read as widely and as diversely as possible. Because really that's a lot of what it's about, is trying to narrow what people can read and hear about. So I hope that people will continue to seek out a wide range of diverse books, so that their kids will grow up understanding other viewpoints and being more compassionate and, like I said, better citizens.
I want to go back and talk about the importance of allowing people to read what they need to read. I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings by Maya Angelou is one book that gets banned a lot. And it was a book when I was 15 that changed my life. And yes, there were hard topics, but some of the things that she encountered in her life that were difficult were things that had happened to me in my life. And it gave me a lifeline. So I think we really need to be careful when we are banning, we can be banning someone's lifeline, and I think we need to be careful not to do that. I do think parents have the right to, whatever they want to do in their household and what they say is appropriate for their young people. But for the way I look at it, I think you expand your mind, you broaden your horizon, and you become, especially about history, you become empathetic with others. And I think that is what we need in America, across the world. We need more empathy. And that's what a book has always done for me. I don't have to be Jewish to understand the Holocaust. I understand that apartheid and how it relates to me and the sadness and the compassion that I feel. You don't have to be African American to understand the chattel slavery that went on here. And I'm naming some horrific things, but there are also beautiful things that happen in our culture that we can share and we can unite and we can come together by understanding each other's culture. And I think that's important and that is lacking, especially with people who are trying to erase history and say this is not important, this is not necessary. So I want to make that note that we should celebrate each other by reading each other's work. That's why it's important to have different poet laureates from different viewpoints. So we both will only have two terms and then it will go on to someone else.
PEN America reported while the movement to ban books is driven by a vocal minority demanding censorship, a 2022 poll conducted by the American Library Association found that over 70% of parents oppose book banning, leaving many public school districts in a bind. We want to hear from you to contribute to our banned book segment here on Listen and Be Heard. You can use your voice memo app on your smartphone and record a short message. Introduce yourself, just your first name. Hi, my name is. Record no more than 2 to 3 minutes. Hold the phone about an inch or so away from your chin and find a quiet place to make that recording. Email it to us at bbooks@listenandbeheard.net. bbooks@listenandbeheard.net by hitting that share button in the app. All these instructions we'll also have at listenandbeheard.net. And when you submit that recording, please share with us your name if you'd like to be added to our mailing list, and also that you give permission for Listen and Be Heard to include your voice in the radio show and in the podcast. Thanks.
This is Listen and Be Heard, an hour for writers and readers. I'm Martha Cinader, strolling in the audio garden and hoping that we can enjoy this picnic poetry break we planned for Black History Month. So far, so good, but it's gray out here. I'm enjoying the warmer temperatures, though. Last weekend, Tony Robles, my erstwhile co-host, went to the Versers of Color open mic in Hendersonville, where they were celebrating Black History Month. And he brought me a basket full of poetry. So I want to share some of the harvest with you, but I'm going to take a little shortcut to grab a few umbrellas. And I'll meet you there in about half a minute. So make yourself comfortable. Find your way over there, and I'll see you soon. This is Listen and Be Heard Radio, WLBH.org. Welcome to the audio garden. Let's cultivate our collective wisdom nurture creativity, and spread love. There you are. I hope you made yourself comfortable. We're going to hear two poems right now. One from Crystal Cawley and the other from Olavian Landrum, both of who read at the open mic Versers of Color in Hendersonville, North Carolina, which is a weekly event in case you would like to go and see what that's about. And I just saw Meg Reid come through the garden gate, so let me go welcome her while you listen to these poems.
So my poem is titled, I just wrote it a few minutes ago too, Black. The infinite beauty in God's perfect sight. Beautiful in black like the darkest night. Black will shine even without the stars radiating light. Black is beautiful. Black is a part of me. We are often overlooked. Black is one of the greatest creations that all can see. Black is when the footsteps made the escape at night. Step left, step right. Black signals the direction when freedom takes flight. Black and beautiful is how I poetically feel. Spoken word poetry at the Shakedown Lounge keeps it real. My Black is beautiful, a brilliant work of art, loving all shades of blackness deeply in my heart that is indescribable with hope for the darkest skin. Our blackness is not a sin. Feeling confident about the skin I'm in, yes, confidence will always win. Words to make you blink, just enough to make him wink. The richness of Black History Month to make you all think. Happy Black History Month. So this first poem I wrote for my cousin. We were sitting at dinner and I asked him what he wanted for his birthday. And he said, write me a poem. And this is what I wrote. The life we live is always different than how we imagine. Rainbows don't end with pots of gold. Fairies aren't real, and princes don't live outside the movies. Reality is a hard pill to swallow, yet we do it anyway. We are taught that life is hard and we have to keep going. Some of us have people who take the time to make sure that our clouds don't overshadow our rainbows. Some will even bring us an explanation about the rain. Rain is needed for flowers and grass to grow. Too much water and you'll drown your garden. Tend to the things that you want to see bloom and flourish. Nothing happens because you just want it to. Work needs action behind it. Ask questions about the concepts you don't quite understand. Life is not a bed of roses. It's the tug and pull of every day, making sure your roses are still standing. Enjoy the moments in the sun where butterflies land on your nose. Be cautious of weeds. Some are harmless, and others will be detrimental to your crops. Uproot the danger before it becomes deadly. Get frustrated, cry, talk, argue, and laugh, because no matter how much rain you get, as long as light shines bright, your rainbow will appear. You don't need a pot of gold, or fairies, or princes. All you need are people who check in on your garden, the ones who make sure everything is okay. It may not be every day, but the effort is all that matters.
Yes, we're checking on the garden here, spreading mulch and preparing pots for seeds. Thank you to Olavian Landrum for that poem and Crystal Cawley for the one before that. Read at Versers of Color in Hendersonville, North Carolina, a weekly open mic event. we're also learning about the growing zones and microclimates for books around here. As I mentioned, for season 2, I'm sharing my personal journey to publishing my latest novel. So, a couple things I've learned so far is that maybe I should call it historical literary fiction because it takes place in the 1990s in New York City. And I lived through the 90s and I'm still alive, so I wasn't thinking like that's historical, but maybe it is. Another thing is that moral support is very helpful, and I've been finding that with 2 different writing groups that I'm a part of. And I was reminded over the weekend in one of those groups that the most important thing is for me to be my authentic self. So, part of authentic me is to read aloud. I really enjoy that. So, I'm going to find a way to do a bit more of that since I have not been doing it regularly for pretty regularly now. And one path to that is to get to know all the independent bookstores in the region. And one of them really stands out around here, and that's Hub City in Spartanburg. And Meg Reid is the resident master gardener there. And I've been really looking forward to talking to her about everything they do there. And she's already in conversation, and it looks like the weather is not going to hold up just for this conversation. So I'm going to go grab an umbrella and then we will, for Meg, I'm going to go grab an umbrella for Meg and then we'll join the conversation.
So we have been around since 1995, and we started out as a hyper-regional press that was focused on publishing books about Spartanburg, and then it grew, and by 2010 we were publishing books about the entire South. And now in the last 10, 15 years, we've really gained national and international acclaim and awards. But we've continued to only publish books about the South. We're still very tight with our mission. We publish fiction, nonfiction, poetry, and books of regional interest. We publish 8 to 10 books a year. Everybody works in we have basically 3 of us working in Spartanburg, and then we have another person who works remotely. We don't print the books in Spartanburg. Everyone always asks that. We print them up in Michigan. We do have a distributor that distributes them nationally and internationally, and we get them, as I said, from book prizes, from open submission calls, and from agents. And we have something right now called the South Carolina Novel Series, where any novelist, any writer in South Carolina can submit to it, and it's free, and it's in partnership with the South Carolina Arts Commission.
But it does have to be about the South.
It does have to be about, well, it has to be the South Carolina Novel Prize, not necessarily have to live in the South. We don't the mission in terms of about the South or by the South, we fall more on, we will always look at a project if it's by somebody who lives here, works here, even if it's not about the South. So if you're writing about China, but you live in Charleston, we're going to look at your book because you're a Southern writer to us. So there's no style of book necessarily that it has to be. Now, the best projects for us, you asked about projects I'm particularly proud of, are the ones where the person is from the South, is writing about the place, and is writing about the place from a perspective or angle that we just haven't seen before. And those are, especially with our novels, we have a Cold Mountain Fun series with Charles Fraser, and those are supposed to be big contemporary novels that really tackle big social issues. And those are the kind of books that routinely get us into like People magazine, Oprah magazine, Boston Globe, New York Times, the national kind of attention that we get, because our Southern base and our Southern focus, combined with a writer who really knows the place that they're writing from, that has been the most amazing kind of recipe. If there is a recipe, that's the recipe for success that we've had, because other publishers are big and national and doing everything, and we're really focused. And so that's the joy of it.
They tell writers to write what they know, and I guess you're publishing what you know.
Exactly.
Which is local, which is what you know best, right? Where you are and the people around you. But I'm hearing that Southern doesn't necessarily mean whatever idea that people might have of what a Southern person is. Like that's a multiplicity of kinds of people,
Exactly.
and it's just people who actually live here.
We're really interested in making in kind of disrupting the idea of what Southern fiction can be, whether that's, there's beach reads and there's Faulkner and there's all these kind of well-worn paths, and they're very good paths and they're good quality things. But we're also very interested in the idea that there are a lot of people living and writing in the South. It's a huge region if you take from DC to Texas, and they have a lot of different experiences and backgrounds, and the South is changing and the demographics are changing. And so we want to be a publisher that is grounded in our community and reflects the changes around us. And the work that we get and the work that we publish is more interesting because of that, because people come to it with like, oh, I Southern writing, I have an idea and of what that is. And then they encounter our books and they might get something, a perspective or a voice that they didn't expect to see. So that's really what we're trying to do.
Give me a couple titles off the top of your head in the last few years, or well, since you've been there. Like, what's the book you're most proud of?
Well, just a couple months ago in September, we published Hallie Hill's Good Women. That was the one that was in People magazine and Oprah and lots of big places. It was Kirkus Review's one of their best books of the year. And it's short stories. And Hallie she lives in North Carolina, and it's about Black women in Appalachia. So I suggest people check that one out. They're very funny. They're very contemporary. They're not stodgy and old fashioned. We love Drew Lanham, who hopefully many people are familiar with. He is at Clemson. He won the MacArthur Genius Grant. He's an ornithologist, birder, writer, and we publish his poetry. And we have a book that is one of our biggest selling titles called Sparrow Envy. And we have a new one coming out in April called Joy is the Justice We Give Ourselves. And Drew really writes incredibly about race and about nature, but the poems are very personal too. And so it's unlike anything anyone else is doing. And it's Drew is one of the best speakers you will ever hear speak. And he is a just total gem of South Carolina and of the whole country now, obviously. But those are two things that's recent and coming out that we've been working on that I really love to tell people about.
Thank you for that. And your workshop, Paths to Publishing, is happening on February 22nd at 6 p.m. And where is the Mayfair Art Studios?
The Mayfair Arts Studio is on the west side of Spartanburg, and so it's in an old textile mill, and it's an incredible space with studios and all sorts of vibrant sort of arts stuff going on. There's pottery studios, dance studios, and so if people haven't been to Mayfair, I think this is a great opportunity for them to go and see the space and see the remarkable thing that the Chapman Cultural Center has done. And I'm really excited about the talk, and you can see I love talking about this stuff, and I love telling people all the secrets and hopefully helping make things a little bit more clear.
And so people can go to mayfairartstudios.org for more information about the event. And I think it's hubcity.org for Hub City Publishing and Bookshop.
Yes, Hub City Press on Twitter, Hub City Writers on Instagram, hubcity.org. Sign up for our newsletter to hear about all our other workshops and programming that we do.
Meg Reid, Executive Director of Hub City Publishing, I want to thank you for your passion about the whole subject of publishing and sharing so much information with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. And it was great to hear about the show, and I'm just thrilled to be a part of it.
Thank you. Well, it looks like a total washout, folks. If you're still here in the garden with me, you're some real troopers. Meg had to run, but she promised to come back next week to talk about publishing from the writer's point of view. But that's a whole lot that she shared with us just now. if you live in South Carolina, you could submit to their book prize or during the open submission period. And when they talk about an open submission period, what they mean is that they will read unsolicited manuscripts that without an agent calling them up or something like that. And if you have an agent, well, your agent should probably already know about Hub City Publishing. So congratulations on having an agent. There's also their Cold Mountain series, which you might feel like you're appropriate for or not, like me. I don't feel like I should submit to that. But there's also the South Carolina novel series, which is in association with the state of not California, definitely not, the state of South Carolina. And I'm considering that one after having this conversation with her. I didn't think I was going to, but she's saying that, even if your novel's not about South Carolina, it might be enough that you live here in South Carolina. It might not, but it might, because they really are interested in novels about place. But I do feel like my novel is about place, but the place is actually New York City, but I think the themes are larger than that. So I'm going to take a chance, I think, and just submit to that. It's not really taking much of a chance because it doesn't cost anything to submit to that one. And that's something else I've been thinking about with publishing, is what I'm willing to pay for to submit, which is not much, because I think I did the work. I wrote the book. And I understand all the pressures on small publishers and why they do ask people to pay. But I still feel like, there's a whole lot of pressures and things on writers too. And to write a novel is a lot of work. And so I'm going to value my work. And while I might pay like $2 or $3 to help with administrative type fees, I'm not shelling out $20, $30, $50, whatever they're asking for these contests, or even to submit to a small press. So this novel series, it costs nothing to submit. And there's no judgment in that. If you're willing to pay, I think that there are good reasons to pay as well. But I'm just not willing. I'm drawing some boundary lines here. And part of that is just going back to thinking about being, my authentic self. I believe in what I'm doing. And so rather than being too anxious to submit everywhere, I have my novel in process at a feminist press and a couple other places. And so I'm going to wait for feedback. And in the meanwhile, I'm going to cultivate more of an attitude of, this is what I'm doing. If you like it, come and talk to me about it. So we'll see how that works out. So getting back to all the things in that short conversation that she told us we could do, another thing is that I got a couple more titles for my to be read list, which is getting longer. I'm going to have to look into Holly Hill and Drew Lanham, neither of which have I read a single book written by either one of them. And who knows, maybe they'll even show up here in the audio garden one day. Next week, as I mentioned, she promised that we're going to talk about submissions, about agents, about different ways and platforms for getting published. So I hope that you will come back for that conversation. And as well, we'll hear some more Black History Month poetry. And also, we'll be hearing from Leslie Ann Brown. We'll be making a phone call to Denmark just to talk to her about counter storytelling and to introduce the idea of how to go about doing that, telling a counter story. What does that even mean? Because I thought it was just sort of a word that I liked. But actually, it's been studied. It's a form of writing, and there's been a lot of essays and thought directed towards that subject of counter storytelling. And I'm going to get deeper into that with Leslie Ann in preparation for the following week, when we will hear her counter story of The Little Mermaid. So I hope you'll join us again in the audio garden next week. My name is Martha Cinader. The show is the Listen and Be Heard Hour for readers and writers. And I want to thank you for joining me here in the audio garden. I want to thank Davine Dial, of course, for introducing Listen and Be Heard to the broadcast airwaves at WPVM in Asheville, North Carolina, and KCEI in Taos, New Mexico, for airing this show out there. Thank you. DJ Jeannie Hopper is my associate producer. Jay Rodriguez Sierra provides background music and loops, and you can learn more about him at jrodriguezsierra.com. Jeremiah Cothran has been doing some editing for us, and Yvette Murray is the voice in the banned books segment of our show. Tony Robles is a contributor, and we hope to be hearing more from him again soon. My name is Martha Cinader, and I want to thank you for listening and for the opportunity to be heard.
Living it is. Giving it. Having it to give. Taking it. Moving it around. Living it, giving it, having it, taking it, moving it, shaking it, creating it, loving it. Living it is loving it. Living it is sewing a coat, investing each stitch with magic, creating a unique design, putting it on and wearing it the rest of your life. Living it is knowing that what you see, what you hear is tangible. It's being a rock in the river and being the river too. It's hearing, you'll never be able to do that. Living it is knowing you will do it. It's speaking the unspoken. It's thinking the unthinkable. It's doing the unexpected. It's quitting before you get fired. Living it is giving it is having it is taking it is moving it, shaking it, creating it, loving it. Living it is loving it. Living it is loving a man you're not supposed to love. It's giving way to emotions, creating commotions, calling attention to yourself, and eye contact. Living it is learning from someone who can actually show you. It's cleaning your teacher's house or helping her to find one. It's never ever saying J-O-B. Living it is a one-way ticket and no solid plans. It's smoking a J in a smoke cafe in Amsterdam. It's saying the day is pretty in a strange new city. Living it is giving it is having it is taking it is moving it, shaking it, creating it, loving it. Living it is having nothing to lose and everything to gain. It's putting all of your charms and attributes, every single one of them, to good use. It's knowing the kindness of strangers and love for sale. Living it is knowing where to buy rice and beans in bulk. It's knowing herbs are cheaper than doctors. It's keeping it together when you're falling apart. It's writing poetry to ease a broken heart. Living it is knowing the stage, looking into bright lights, late nights, barroom fights, fantastic sights, inspiration, and moving on, 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 and moving on. Because living it is giving it is having it to give. Having it to give is taking it, snatching it, moving it, shaking it, creating it, loving it. Living it is being responsible for your own groove. It's playing on street corners for nickels and centines and being asked to move. It's sleeping in roofless squats in ancient convents. It's running up against police, getting thrown into the streets where you belong. Because living it is subletting. Living it is knowing your feet belong on the ground. That life is a dream, that things are never, ever, ever, ever what they seem, and the certainty that the good things, the really, really, really good things, are free. Living it is love. Living it is love. Living it